Hello, everyone. It's really great pleasure to be talking to you today. I would like to firstly apologize because I am speaking from my bed. I'm going to be speaking very slowly and quietly because I just got COVID and the symptoms are a bit hard. So I'm gonna do my best to keep the presentation efficient and 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 short. But however, I just wanted to emphasize what a great honor it is to be speaking in front of a group such as this today, and I hope you find value in my contribution. Let me just share my presentation. Can you all see it? Yeah, great, awesome. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Gabby. I am a graduate student of data science in UC Berkeley. And as such, I'd like to talk to you about how I believe, as a young person, that we can build climate change resilience. And not only that we can, but that we have to create it through data and data science. So we are all here today because the climate crisis is, if not one of the biggest, probably the biggest challenge that we as humanity have faced ever. And the thing with big challenges is that it requires big solutions. And it is not questionable that data is one of the biggest assets that humanity has today. The amount of data that is produced daily is increasing at an exponential rate. It is calculated that just in a couple of years, there are going to be billions, not millions, billions of, billions of devices connected to the Internet of Things. That means we're going to have billions of things like cell phones and smartwatches and cameras watching over and collecting and producing data. That it is big and complex, but can also bring important insights about the planet and about us as humanity. And the thing is, this huge asset is already used by companies like, not only big data companies like Google and Facebook and things like that, but it's used by every single industry to generate value. And when they talk about value, they usually talk about money. And the problem here is that the leverage of data is not really proportional. The leverage of data for solving climate change related problems, solving the climate crisis, is not really proportional to the urgency of the problems that we have today. That's why I want to talk about it here. Today, I'd like to tell you a couple of examples of what happens if we do not use data to try to build resilience for climate change. I still have not seen an example, or a fully successful example of a city or a place that does this. So I'm going to tell you two stories about two cities that I've seen failing to do that and the consequences that this can have. And after this, if you want cautionary tales, I'm going to give you a couple of points of how I think data science can be leveraged for the creation of climate change resilience. So we're going to start, if you want, with a tale of two cities. The first one will be urban water resilience in Freetown in Sierra Leone. So this story starts in 2018. Back then, I was also a graduate student, but I was a graduate student in University College London. I was writing a dissertation for the engineering faculty titled Climate Change Resilience of Urban Water Systems. And thanks to the support of the university and its industrial partners, I managed to go to Freetown in a research project related to that. The objective of this project was to bring together many aspects of resilience and try to create a framework, an evaluation framework that the authorities of the city could use to assess the level of climate resilience of their urban water system. And obviously use this evaluation to improve any area that could be improved. The photo that I'm showing you here is the Guma Valley water dam. This is the main source of water of Freetown. And from here, it goes down on a network to the entire city. So before getting to the city, as a good student, I did my literature review, I did my research. And when I got there, I did every single thing I could to get information. I not only went around the city, but I did site visits to the main points of the water system. I went to see dams. I saw pipes. I went into deep into the center of the city to see the state of water distribution and recollection. I don't know if you can see in the center of this photo, these little lines by the water tank here in the center behind the people in the front. But those are examples of exposed and very fragile pipes that are used every day to distribute water. So that's kind of like the level of vulnerability. I went to see people and talk to authorities. I talked to NGOs. I made stakeholder and beneficiary workshops. As I said, I look at the plans. I look at the water plans, the treatment plans. I even learned the basics of dam designs from a group of international group of engineers that was working on the site. And at the end, I collected all this information. And back in London, I wrote a framework. I created a framework for evaluation for climate resilience called RESUP. And my professors all say, oh yeah, it's a great piece of academic writing and it's amazing. And at the end, this framework helped for two things. It helped me graduate with a really good grade and a distinction. And it ended up being just a piece of paper in the Guma Valley company in Freetown because absolutely no one used it. So I think that piece of paper may have helped someone kill a mosquito or two, but I'm not really sure. And here's the thing, the reason why it wasn't used really at the end, even though it was a very sound framework of evaluation, was because there was no data. There was no data in the city about the use of water. There was no data about rainfall. There was no data about even who paid for water service or who didn't. So what I'm trying to say here is that the authorities in charge of the Freetown water system weren't capable or willing or both to start data collection that show them important and actionable insights about how to improve the health of their system, or at least how to keep it. So that was very problematic. At the moment, at the time, I didn't know that, but in my time in Freetown, this was the most important encounter I had. The person here in the photo is Mr. Comberg. He had worked for the Guma Valley Water Company for 20 years at the time. And he showed me the state of the system. And he also showed me his notebook. This notebook that you see here are the daily entries that Mr. Comberg kept of both the levels of the water dam and the rainfall that fell in the region every single day. So he, without knowing, created an invaluable database of that had information that could be used as a proxy of the level of water that was available for the whole city, and the level of vulnerability that the water system had in that 20 years period. So I took this information, obviously with his permission. I use it for my own research, and I share it with the group of engineers that were working at the time to improve the water system of the city. And we saw very important insights. This graph here is a figure that shows, sorry, is a figure that shows the number of rainfall days over the Guma Dam every year. And we can see that from 2000 to 2018, it diminished. So at the end of the 20-year period, we had 50% less rainfall, which means 50% less water. And this diminishment of resource came when the city was growing. There was migration, there was growth of population. So the system just kept having more and more stress over it. This second figure that we also created with that information is the levels of water every day in periods of year of the dam. Each line represents a year. And you can see that the 2001 line is very similar to the 2017 line. And you can say, oh, it's actually not that bad. But actually, you can see that the 2007, 2008 levels were strongly diminishing. And then somehow in 2017, it went back up. Well, it turns out after some interviews with the staff of the company, it turns out that this happened because people in the city, instead of having running water 24/7, starting having running water just for given amounts of hours every day. They start closing the taps first 3 hours, then 4 hours, and so on. And by the time I came to the city in 2018, the city just had running water for 6 hours a day. And obviously it took me weeks to realize that, because I was staying in a very privileged area full of hotels and infrastructures that were able to have their own reservoirs. So again, as Father Josh was saying, it's a matter of privilege, right? If you have access to the resources to have your own little reservoir, then you're not bothered by the problem. And the problem is that the big majority do not have those resources. So the project in 2018 for the improvement of the city, and I'm not talking about a little student project, I'm talking about a international project that was funded by several governments and cost millions and millions of dollars to improve the water system, happened. And yes, it improved the health of the system. But at the end, no effort was on to gather this information and to use it. So today, water access in Sierra Leone is still a big issue. More than 60% of the people in the country have no access to water. And that just tells us that doing things without backing it with data will make any effort that we do today useless tomorrow, because we're not going to be able to adapt if we don't know what we're doing. So that was Freetown. That was me as a graduate student. I went, I saw, I was like, oh no, that's a problem. And then I left. That's it. But then fast forward some years to 2022. And I am now in Monterrey. I left London a couple of years ago, where I lived for like 10 years, all my 20s, as a student and a young professional. Because at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I got my first son, and he was a month old when the pandemic started. So my husband and I made a very hard decision of leaving the UK and coming to Mexico, where my family is, so that he was able to interact with more people during these years. And I believe it was the right decision, because it's been over 2 years of the pandemic. We are still getting sick. And it was only last month that the CDC approved vaccines for little ones older than 6 months old. So that's great, because now both my kids, now I have two, both my kids will be able to get the vaccine. And we came to Monterrey because Monterrey is a great city. I am actually quite proud of living here. It's one of the most prosperous and industrial cities in Mexico. And it has one of the most prosperous boroughs in Latin America. There's a sense of community there. They are proud of their achievements as a city and their conservative values. But, however, the life in Monterrey has become a bit more like life in Freetown in the past couple of months. At the moment, we're going through the biggest draw that we have seen ever. This is one of the reservoirs, one of the 3 reservoirs that feed the city. And as you can imagine, it usually doesn't look like this. It usually looks like a single body of water, but it's completely dry right now. The 3 reservoirs that feed the city were last month at 48%, 2%, and 3% capacity, which is nothing. And I'm pretty sure now it's worse. So a couple of months ago, we started getting cuts on the times that running water could come to our houses. And at the moment, we're just getting about 5 to 6 hours, of running water every day. And sometimes it's even less. And again, we see privilege at play, because if you live in a house big enough to have its own reservoir, if you have enough income to be able to get private services, then you can manage to get running water in your house and just notice a change in pressure, because instead of using the public network, you use your private network, which is the case in my house. However, the majority of the city is suffering. It's like you have big areas of the city in which you don't get water ever. And this is a huge problem. Diseases are on the rise. This graph that I'm showing you here is just the Google statistics for COVID-19. So as you can see, a couple of months ago, we were controlling COVID-19, but now it's on the rise again. And then one of the examples of the consequences. One of the very light examples. And why does this happen? Because people don't have water to wash their hands. We don't have access to basic hygiene. And it's not only COVID-19, it's also waterborne diseases. Like a month ago, I had to take my oldest son to the emergency room 3 times because of a norovirus outbreak that we had in the city. He's 2 years old and he wouldn't stop vomiting. It was extremely scary. But again, we have the blessings and the resources to deal with that. We can adapt thanks to everything we have. And again, the majority of the population do not have those resources. So it is dangerous.
Gabriela, time is up. Would you sum
I'm sorry.
up for me?
Yeah, I can wrap it up. So basically, this is very grim, and this is what happens if we do not take decisions with data. Data science can help. We can use Internet of Things to keep an eye on these things. We can use deep learning and a lot of mathematical things that I could spend hours talking about that can help us predict these kind of issues. We need data champions. We need people like you in your position saying we need to make sure we take decisions properly. But the most important thing, guys, and really that's all that I want to say in 10 seconds, is the youth, the kids. These kids are my kids. And if you want to think on timely terms, in 2030, they're going to be in elementary school. In 2050, they're going to be in the late 20s. We don't have time for them to grow up and then take action. We don't have time for me to develop an amazing data career and then take action. We need to take action now. So you don't need to be an expert in data collection and data governance and all these things to make it happen in your organizations. Just know that they're there and that we need to use it for the better. Thank you.